Hey everybody, before I actually get to the show, I just wanted you to know that I have been recording basically since the beginning of the year, but I've been struggling when it comes to technical difficulties and administrative stuff. So we're just going to go ahead and put something out here and now kind of learn as we go along. For this episode specifically, I actually did have a 30-minute segment that, due to technical difficulties, lost everything but 5 minutes, the first 5 minutes. So everything's being redone.
But just giving you a little bit of background. I guess we could call this like an outtake. All right, well, enjoy the show!
So, just so that you're aware, normally in this particular place on Spotify, there would be the song Save Me by Gautier. And I'll start talking about that in a moment. But due to the fact of compatibility and rights not being applied or applicable across platforms, I had to take it out so that I could span it to a bigger audience. I'll start using more free and open source music. But that's all that you missed. So if you want to check it out, the song that opened up the original recording is called Save Me by Gautier, Gotye. Thanks. Hey, Soul Family. Welcome to the podcast. So, you may be wondering why I chose Save Me by Gautier to play for the intro. Well, since we're talking about the past, it came up on my playlist recently, and I realized how I had been in that state that he sings about. It was hard for me to always be consistent in love that people could see because I could not love myself. Internally, letting the inner critic run, never thinking that I was good enough for balanced love. And I would often tell myself that I had given up on ever being able to consistently receive and give in a balanced way. So the name of today's episode is The Past is Not a Key That Fits the Lock of the Present. And I really want to discuss how the past reduces our ability to be present, keeping us from the future we desire. In the words of Afratzi Bolkiewicz, change must start with the individual, and the individual must want and feel ready to make such change. Essentially, we must first become aware of the chains that bind us to the past. We must then see the key that unlocks the chains and the door to the now. The easiest way to the future is through the present. We must consciously pick up the key when we are ready for change to move forward through any doorway. It is always okay to not be ready. But for the most part of our short time here, we must have courage to invite change as it is the only constant. Change is in nature, and therefore our nature, contrary to what popular culture and the Matrix in the Black Mirror might have you believe. But change itself is another rabbit hole, so let's focus today on becoming present and presence of consciousness as a first step. So before we walk into those woods, let's pause for a quick meditation at the edge. Take a moment to be as and who you are. Take a moment to sit and close your eyes if you are able to. And we'll take a few breaths. So breathe in the good and breathe out the bad. Breathe in the now and breathe out the past. Breathe in compassion for yourself and breathe out compassion for others. Now that you've likely calmed yourself a little bit, if anything, here is a mantra that I want you to keep in mind. We'll take a few more breaths following it to let it sink in before beginning our trek into the woods. By accepting the disappointments of my past, I heal to feel as light as a feather in the now. By accepting the disappointments of my past, I heal to feel as light as a feather in the now. By accepting the disappointments of my past, I heal to feel as light as a feather in the now. So we'll take a few more breaths and let that sink in. Even if you don't remember the entire mantra, the pieces most important to your subconscious in this moment will stick. In with the good, out with the bad. In with the new, out with the old. In with the now, out with the past. Breathe in compassion for yourself and breathe out compassion for others. So, step with me into the wood. I'll lead the way and mind that branch and the gap. Now, how did I find that key? By writing down my thoughts, even ones that I judged for being in my brain in the first place. I began to change the way that I thought about myself. I began to observe my mind. Reciting mantras and affirmations increased my ability to go forward in my life with purpose and focus. Removing noise and extraneous information is key to research and development. This is actually my daily task in my career as a design researcher. I seek to improve designs by testing concepts and ideas in the search for more efficient design choices. I began to apply these principles to my own life, attempting to ease pain points. In the words of Siddhartha Gautama, the Buddha, pain is certain, suffering is optional. The road to consciousness takes a lot of empathy, and if you're here, you're someone who seeks growth within your own life. You'll soon find, if you haven't already, that when it comes to personal development or holistic user interface design, empathy is paramount. Now, what exactly is a mantra and how did it help me, you ask? Well, to start, mantra comes from the Sanskrit word meaning a sacred message or text, charm, spell, or sacred counsel. These things, mantras, have been powerful for me because, well, let's just say that I went through some really dark times over and over and over again in different ways. Some may say it was me learning karmic cycles, but the purpose behind a mantra is to bring focus to the mind. I began to observe my mind, using it more as the tool it's designed to be, not a state to live within. Our world moves too fast. There are endless problems and calculations that we could make every day. You hear the ambulance? This also means that simple tasks are no longer simple. They are layered with everything else that we are worried about after we finish any individual task. Not all situations in life require problem solving. But if we are consistently in a state of problem solving, we can never sit in the contentment of our present, consistent being. Our one gift, the breath of life. I bring this up as a precursor to the events that I will share today and throughout this podcast. It was a particular compounded series of events that acted as a spark to get me off my ass. And it was a series of patterns that I recognized later that forced me to slow the fuck down and truly observe my life. Often, when we truly slow down, we are not in any danger, and many things are simply out of our control. You may be surprised to learn over time that letting go is the way and path towards contentment. It is our unsettled mind that continuously searches for a problem to be solved. And that there is a quagmire. No quicksand today. We're going around it if you don't mind. So, have you ever stopped in the middle of washing dishes or putting your clothes on or a simple task to appreciate your mind's ability to problem solve on the fly? Perhaps you should have gratitude for those small moments. Give thanks to your ability and gift of being able to do that task. While there may be worries ahead, the present is where you will find the most contentment in life. When we can quiet the mind from all else than a single thought or no thoughts at all, we find a new, powerful control over the way that we conduct our lives. Now that we've had some food for thought, let's begin that climb. So, what's the story, Aari? How did you get here? And what advice can you give me? We'll start at the beginning. The year is 2020. It's January 2020 to be precise. After a long road to set myself up for the right certification, education, I went back to school. I was working full time as a paralegal with the attorney that I grew to respect after graduating from college. And life was seeming good. I had a plan to grow and find more income as well as challenge in my life. I had about 2 months of acclimation to work life balance before the pandemic shut America down. I was an essential worker as I was still in the legal field, and since my schooling was virtual, that continued forward. As things in the world began to progress and digress, stresses at home began to mount. About 2 months after the close of the world, one of my siblings had a mental breakdown. Luckily, my job and school were accommodating to the changes that I needed to make in my life. I did not expect to run into difficulty with my own family and helping that sibling to get help. But the exploration of clinical psychiatric care could be a whole series on its own, and the differences between generations, so we won't get into that today. Long story short, when someone at my job also had a mental breakdown, work mounted, overtime increased, sleepless nights ensued, and yes, I did have to seek out some Adderall to manage to have enough time to have enough actual oomph in my life. As the worker and my sibling both sought stability, the summer began to make a little more sense, even in a world that didn't make any sense at all. We were all trying to feel close while feeling completely separated and isolated. I had job security, but background stress went unmitigated, and I also knew a lot of people who didn't have any jobs at all. I began to exercise like crazy when I could, just so that I could keep my body going. My partner moved to Chicago that July, and there was a bright spot in the summer. It wasn't long before the fall brought new chaos. As isolation began to take a toll on my relationship and the relapses began with my coworker and my sibling, I began to just do my best to take care of as many people as possible. I was showing up at my best friend's house to make sure that she didn't feel alone, as she lived alone. I was deserting my own home or isolating with work so that I could sometimes just get away from family. Let's just say that antidepressants began to help me through. However, I would soon learn that it also began to destroy my sex life. Eventually, I found things that worked for me and that didn't destroy my sex life. But by October of that year, the isolation and feeling of invisibility had become too great for my partner. They understood where I was coming from, but I did not have enough time to continuously go visit them, talk on the phone, or ensure that I kept up with them because of other obligations. We decided to break it off, and we took some time apart. But by November, when we reopened conversations, I let them know how much they had meant to me. I had never found anyone that I thought saw me like they did. I called up my cousin and we decided we were going to drive up there overnight. I would take a day off, and I had lined up 5 interviews. I slept through the first one due to the fact that we had got to a hotel overnight and we didn't get there until about 3 a.m. But I was grateful to have a cousin I could count on. This will come into play later as to how important Tariq Johnson is to me. Um, but I digress. So I sent my partner a message that I was in Chicago doing interviews and had done everything I could to at least show them that I wanted this to work. I was basically at the point of willing to live out of my car if it meant that I could make things happen. My ex-partner allowed me to stop by their house on the way out of Chicago at the end of the day, and somehow I saved the relationship. I didn't get any of the initial jobs that came from that effort, though. However, one recruiter who I had made a good relationship with, 6 months later, would pave the path that led me to where I am now. Now, I won't go into all of the relapses of my coworker, or my sibling, and all of the stuff tied up with that in my family, or the fact that there was a brief moment where I ended up having to work illegal overtime to keep the small legal business that I was working for afloat. Let's just say that there were so many stresses that it was very hard to focus on my true self when we were in the midst of a zeitgeist of inner reflection. So I'm going to wrap this story up so that we can get to the top of this mountain already. After many struggles and battles, after many sacrifices, so that I could be with someone that meant the world to me, I made it happen. Even looking back sometimes, I still don't even know how the fuck I did it. It's funny now in retrospect, because we don't even talk anymore. 4 years for not even a friendship. So it is now time for our mountain pause. Take a few breaths with me and imagine here. Close your eyes and feel the wind on your skin. Can you hear the trees rustling down below? So we'll kind of go back to the beginning and I'll give you a new mantra. So take a deep breath in, welcoming the new. And exhale out all the bad that holds you back. Take a deep breath in, imagining all doorways opening, even within you. And take a deep breath out, letting go of all of the illusions of locked doors. Breathe in compassion for yourself. Breathe out compassion for others. Mistakes are how I grow. I remove distractions to help me have more focus. Mistakes are how I grow. I remove distractions to help me have more focus. Mistakes are how I grow. I remove distractions to help me have more focus. Breathe in love. Exhale love for the universe. Breathe in light. Exhale light from your heart. Breathe in compassion for yourself. Exhale compassion for others. Breathe in focus towards your desires. Exhale the distraction of things that no longer serve you. I know we claim to know this in our minds, but we must practice knowing this in our hearts and bodies. The past can bind us to depression and fear in subtle or not so subtle ways. And it's up to us to do the inner work, maybe even get professional help to figure out how the past is keeping us stuck. Often, negative emotions and thoughts stem from underlying issues including unmet needs, relationship problems, or poor coping skills. And all of those things can be improved. We can't always change relationships, but we can change how we interact with them and engage with them. We can't always immediately fix our coping skills, but we can work to better them. And if our needs aren't being met, then why not let go and find places and people where they are met? As I had said, I struggled with a negative self view for a long time that kept me from experiencing the forward momentum that I envisioned. Even doing everything in my power, critical thoughts silently circled my subconscious, telling me that I was never doing enough. People were never happy with me or how I existed. I didn't know this was a reflection of how I truly saw myself as unworthy. It kept attracting experiences into my life to reinforce that idea. This is why pattern recognition is a key, and mantras can help you focus on simplicity. With some work that often is internal, we can all realize that some doorways may be being kept shut deliberately, and that some people and situations in our lives can act as barriers and gatekeepers. So, all of these chains are a bunch of bullshit. Now, before we leave this mountaintop, I just want to cover a few things about our main focus today: presence, the power of mantras, observing our mind, and slowing down. So, I had said that I began by writing my thoughts down. And initially, I had to learn to leave judgment of my thoughts and to find a way to love them. Our thoughts, even the repetitive ones, hold keys you will see over time. The thing that holds us back often is the past. The past for us holds a narrative, but you don't have to write forward with it. It can be part of your story, and you can reflect on the strength that you had to get through. But you can always write something new every day, every moment. So now we're going to head back down the mountain through these woods in fast fashion.
Hold on to your butts.
You've heard a good chunk of the story that got me here, minus 2 deaths being dropped like a sack of potatoes from that partner, essentially because of an argument where I said that I didn't just want the appearance of a marriage, I wanted a spiritual marriage. I needed to know that they were going to be there when things got tough. That is the kind of promise that I believe in. As a black man, my ancestors jumped over a broom to make a promise. They bound twine around their fingers, for they had no gold. That is part of my experience, my existence, and my history, my culture. But the sheer fact that this partner began to distance, disappear, become vengeful, and try to enact different forms of control shortly thereafter meant that they actually showed me their true colors. They never actually wanted the true depth and meaning of a relationship. And while I mourned it for a while, I actually set myself free eventually, realizing that what I wanted and what they wanted were incompatible. After I got dumped and forcefully pushed out quite quickly, I ended up with a roommate who I thought was a friend. I had to sleep with a knife under my pillow briefly before quickly moving, 5 months in. Thank God for month-to-month leases. Now, I've brought up all of these stories about other people because for a long time, I was focused on other people. Other people were part of the equation that I couldn't figure out. But what you should know is in this life, the one equation that you do have the ability to figure out better, to have patience with, and who will always be with you is you. You don't always have to get along with everyone. And the more you stand in your authenticity and your own power, the better for you. And not everyone is going to respect you for it. Some people will say you're going down the wrong path. They will think you're being insensitive. But if they actually know you and your heart, then they will be with you. Now, I want to take a moment to pause on this idea of respect. Because I've come to realize that sometimes people won't respect you or your beliefs or validate your experience or even your time. But if you are discerning, there will be people who do, and you will meet them. Time does not speak to the strength of a relationship in the present, whether a best friend, whether a lover, whether a parent or colleague. These relationships must be consistently renewed, reconciled, or rejected. They are just labels of relationships, and you, at any time, have the authorization to review them. There often is no middle ground because it either is serving you or it is not. You can love some people from a distance without any love lost. But being present means that you must know that there is a difference between there was a time or once upon a time and respecting your time now. Time is the currency of the expression of your soul that you cannot waste. So now we'll move on to this last little bit about Aari. So who the hell is Aari? Initially, Aari was the pseudonym that I chose for this podcast. For those of you that know me personally, I am adding to the beginning of my name. Jeremy, if we talk about Jeremiah, the etymological and theological roots of it, is known as the Weeping Prophet. His book is called Lamentations, a scholarly word for weeping, wailing, grief, sorrow, mourning, howling, lament. The Book of Lamentations expresses the humiliation, suffering, and despair of Jerusalem. And I just want to say that I'm done with my lamentations. I encourage you to do the same. I have spent a lot of time going over how I could have done better for other people and worrying about how I had not shown up for them. Meanwhile, forgetting that the entire time I wasn't factoring in or giving enough weight to my experience. And there were specific relationships where this equation of equal give and take was deceivingly unbalanced, which meant that it wasn't just me. Some of the strife and struggle was me taking on others' burdens unfairly. Sometimes it was the projections of other people that I was wading through. And Aari, as I've begun to take a more spiritual path, represents the spiritual warrior, the high mountain, a soaring eagle, and this identity that I am taking is allowing me to leave the darkness of my past. For it has cast such a long shadow that I have to be done with in order to move more positively into tomorrow, finding light in today. Now, before I forget, if you deal with anxiety, depression, or lament, or even just want to dive more into this topic of presence, finding your grounding, and presence of consciousness, you might want to check out The Power of Now by Eckhart Tolle. It might just change your life. And I believe you can find it, the audiobook, on YouTube for free, most of the time. So look for the version read by the author. It's the best one. Welcome back to Base Camp. So, I know we kind of ran down the mountain a lot quicker than we got to the top of it, but I hope that you've at least taken a few things that may help you in your own journey. And I hope to find a different way to record this, make it more cohesive, and make it fun for you. So, if there are things that you would like to see in the podcast, topics you'd like to discuss, or if there are things that you think that would be good to add, please let me know. Ending everything off, now that you've probably realized, okay, we're back at the end of the forest. Let's go back to a mantra. I surrender, and I am free to be myself now. I make each day better than the last. I surrender, and I am free to be myself now. I make each day better than the last. Whether you believe in the power of affirmation or breaths, look at the scientific data. It will help you. And hopefully, maybe I can help you with some of this as well. May you be blessed. May abundance reign and fall into your life effortlessly. Thank you, and have a good day. I want to play this song called Light Bulb by Gareth Johnson. It kind of gave me the impetus to go ahead and do this, to make me feel like I could do this. And so let's see if it makes you feel like maybe there's more opportunities, doorways, and options than you think. As with the opener, that was not licensed. Same with the closer. The song that I'd like for you to look at, that I closed the original episode with, is Light Bulb by Gareth Johnson. It just was a song that kind of inspired me to just go for it. And so I did. Thanks.